He is still one of the best tight ends in the NFL. He had almost 600 yards this season and 2 touchdowns with the mediocre quarterback. And he had Christian McCaffrey just blowing up the league. And the Carolina Panthers has just released Greg Olsen today. They mutually agreed to part ways. And I think it is time for the Houston Texans to sign Greg Olsen. Cue the intro.
The city of the dream team, Hakeem, Turing, Beyonce, yeah, man. And I remember hot summer, hot winter. I couldn't fight, so the block made a hot spin.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the 713 Houston Sportcast. I'm your host, Ruben Calvillo. And Greg Olsen is getting released today by the Carolina Panthers. Like I said, they both agreed, there was no harm done. But Greg Olsen is now a free agent, and I think it is imperative for the Houston Texans to go get him in the offseason. And here's why I say this, right? Our cap, we do have a bunch of cap space, but it's going to be eaten up by Tunsil. It's going to be eaten up by Deshaun Watson. And adding somebody cheap like Greg Olsen, and he has so much upside. He played 14 games this season, 8 yards shy of 600 and 2 touchdowns. He is basically Darren Fells on steroids. He does everything that Darren Fells does, but better. He could absolutely run routes. He could block. He's a red zone threat, and people will have to game plan for Greg Olsen. I'm sorry, but nobody was game planning for Darren Fells. And Greg Olsen on the Houston Texans make this Houston Texans offense just absolutely dangerous, and it will do wonders for Deshaun Watson because he has a safety blanket like Greg Olsen. I mean, let's be honest, the tight ends towards the end of the season, they did start, to flake. They didn't show up in big games. For example, in the playoff game against the Bills, Darren Fells drops a third down, that could have kept the drive going. Greg Olsen is not going to drop balls. Greg Olsen is going to command the defense attention because of how great he is. He's 34 years old. He's only 1 year older than Darren Fells, and he's going to have a quarterback like Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson loved tight ends. And when you have somebody like Greg Olsen, like DeAndre Hopkins, like Will Fuller, it is going to open up the playbook, and it is going to be so scary with this Houston Texans offense. The only question is, will Bill O'Brien get him? Bill O'Brien is now the GM of the Houston Texans, and what a way to start off your tendency as a GM and go getting one of the best tight ends to ever play the game. Olsen, I believe, would want to be on a contender, right? A bunch of teams are going to go after them, believe it or not. And if you look at the 2 Super Bowl teams, playing this Sunday, what do they both have in common? They have great tight ends. They have George Kittle and they have Travis Kelce. Now, I'm not saying Greg Olsen is going to be like those guys. He was a couple years ago, but not no more. But he is definitely a threat. Adding Greg Olsen makes this offense a top 10, top 5 offense. And it is going to be so dangerous when teams are going to have to go against the Houston Texans because they have to worry about Hop, and then Fuller, and then Stills, and then Greg Olsen. And Greg Olsen is going to be a leader on this team. The Houston Texans, they should release Fells. Not release him, but let him walk in free agency. They should cut Jordan Thomas, and they should bring in Greg Olsen and have him coach Jordan Akins and Kahale Waring. And Kahale Waring is looking like he's going to be, the tight end of the future for this team, the way John McClain was talking about him, the way everybody in training camp and preseason were talking about Kahale Waring. What better to coach to coach Akins and coach Waring than Greg Olsen, who, like I said, is one of the best tight ends of all time. He had a bounce back season, and he had incompetent quarterback play. Kyle Allen was not a good quarterback for the Carolina Panthers. They were feeding Christian McCaffrey until he ran into the ground. With Cam Newton, Greg Olsen was a 1,000-yard receiving tight end. I'm not saying he's going to get there with Watson, but he could be very close to 800 to 900 yards with multiple touchdowns. That's the kind of player that Greg Olsen is, and he is a Bill O'Brien guy. He's going to come in, and he's going to learn the playbook, and he's going to not cause any drama and come in and just go to work. Like I said, a lot of people are going to get him, and why not? The Houston Texans should definitely get Greg Olsen and get this team one step closer, one player closer to the Super Bowl. That's the kind of player that Greg Olsen is. I can just imagine how scary this offense is going to be. But let me know what you guys think. Should the Houston Texans sign Greg Olsen, or should they let him, or should they just let him to the side and not even worry about him? I think it's imperative that you get him. I think he makes this offense better. He makes Deshaun Watson better just by how great of a tight end he is. It's only up to B.O.B. Hey, B.O.B., you were so aggressive last season. Let's be aggressive now. As always, guys, go Texans. You guys have a blessed day.